C&C Equipment has drawn attention not because of a single announcement, but because of how its public-facing business has evolved over time. Based in Nashville, Indiana, C&C Equipment has operated for years in the used equipment and surplus space, building a reputation through direct sales, online marketplaces, and parts distribution. Recently, observers have noted changes in how the company presents itself online, including multiple storefronts, expanded product categories, and branded merchandise. These developments have prompted questions about what changed, why it changed, and whether the shift reflects strategy, growth, or simple adaptation to modern e-commerce practices. C&C Equipment is a privately operated equipment and parts seller based in Nashville, Indiana, with public-facing materials indicating operations dating back to 2004. Over that period, the company has positioned itself primarily in the resale of used heavy equipment, surplus inventory, and related components. Its listings and descriptions consistently emphasize machinery, parts, and specialty items that appeal to buyers seeking utility rather than brand-new stock. The company's identity has been shaped less by traditional advertising and more by where and how it sells. Rather than relying on a single centralized sales channel, C&C Equipment has maintained a presence across multiple online platforms, including independent websites and established third-party marketplaces. This approach aligns with the purchasing habits of buyers in the equipment and surplus space, where trust, availability, and search visibility often matter more than polished branding. Public information shows a business structured around inventory turnover and reach. Equipment listings, parts catalogs, and category groupings suggest an operation designed to handle varied stock rather than a narrow product line. That flexibility helps explain why the company appears differently depending on where it is viewed online. Understanding this baseline is essential. The changes people later noticed did not emerge from a vacuum. They grew out of an existing model focused on accessibility, distribution, and meeting customers wherever they were already shopping. Over time, C&C Equipment's public-facing inventory began to reflect a broader focus than large machinery alone. In addition to complete equipment units, the company increasingly emphasized individual components, replacement parts, and smaller category items that could be sold independently. This shift was visible through expanded parts listings and more detailed product categories across its online properties. For sellers in the used equipment space, parts often represent a different business model than full machines. Individual components move more frequently, reach a wider customer base, and support repeat purchasing behavior. The growing visibility of parts-focused listings suggested that C&C Equipment was adapting to those dynamics rather than relying solely on higher-value, lower-volume sales. This adjustment did not require abandoning the company's original identity. Instead, it layered a parts-driven approach on top of an existing surplus and equipment operation. Listings show components organized by type and application, indicating a system built to handle varied stock and ongoing demand. From an outside perspective, this expansion may have appeared sudden. In practice, it aligned with broader trends in resale and industrial e-commerce, where buyers increasingly search for specific items rather than complete units. The emphasis on parts helped position the business for steady activity and visibility, setting the stage for further changes in how the company presented itself online. As C&C Equipment's online presence evolved, one of the most noticeable developments was the appearance of multiple storefronts operating under the same name. Instead of directing all customers to a single, consolidated website, the business began to exist across several distinct online properties, each serving a slightly different function. This included a modern e-commerce storefront with structured categories, as well as a separate parts-focused page that appeared more basic in design and presentation. To customers encountering the brand for the first time, this fragmentation could appear confusing. However, the existence of parallel storefronts is not uncommon for sellers managing large, varied inventories or transitioning between platforms. Different sites can reflect testing phases, legacy systems that remain active, or attempts to serve different buyer segments without disrupting existing sales channels. In the case of C&C equipment, publicly visible pages list consistent business information, including location and contact details, suggesting continuity rather than a break or rebrand. What changed was not the identity of the business, but the pathways through which customers could reach it. This layered online structure contributed to the perception of unexpected change. For observers comparing older listings to newer storefronts, the contrast in layout and functionality stood out. Yet, viewed collectively, these storefronts reflect a business adapting its infrastructure while keeping existing sales routes intact. Another development that drew attention was the addition of branded merchandise to C&C Equipment's online offerings. Alongside equipment and parts listings, the company's storefront began featuring items such as apparel and small branded accessories. This marked a noticeable departure from a strictly utilitarian catalog focused only on machinery and components. In many industrial and surplus businesses, branded merchandise is not a primary revenue driver. Its presence instead signals a different objective, reinforcing brand recognition and extending visibility beyond transactional purchases. The decision to offer merchandise suggests that C&C Equipment viewed its name as having value beyond inventory alone, enough to support products tied solely to the brand identity. From a structural standpoint, the merchandise listings were integrated into the same e-commerce environment as parts and equipment-related items. This indicates that the expansion did not require a separate brand or platform, but rather an extension of the existing sales framework. Customers browsing for practical items would naturally encounter these branded products in the same ecosystem. To outside observers, this shift may have seemed unexpected, particularly for a business rooted in surplus and heavy equipment. However, within the context of a growing online presence and diversified sales channels, the addition of merchandise fits a broader pattern of brand consolidation and audience engagement rather than a sudden change in direction. Alongside its own websites, C&C Equipment has maintained a consistent presence on established online marketplaces, most notably eBay. Marketplace listings associated with the company describe a range of inventory that includes heavy equipment, military-style vehicles, parts, and related components. This channel functions differently from a standalone store, offering built-in traffic, standardized buyer protections, and a level of trust that independent sites often take years to establish. For many sellers in the equipment and surplus space, marketplaces serve as a stabilizing force. They provide predictable exposure and a familiar purchasing environment for buyers who may be hesitant to transact through lesser-known websites. In this context, C&C Equipment appears to have treated its marketplace presence not as a temporary experiment, but as a long-term component of its sales strategy. Publicly visible seller information lists Nashville, Indiana as the business location, aligning with details shown on the company's other online properties. This consistency reinforces the idea that the marketplace storefront operates as an extension of the same business rather than a separate or unrelated entity. The continued use of marketplaces helps explain how the company sustained visibility while other parts of its online presence evolved. Even as storefront designs, platforms, and product mixes shifted, the marketplace listings provided continuity, anchoring the brand during periods of broader operational change. Much of the attention surrounding C&C Equipment's evolution stems from how those changes appeared to outside observers rather than from any documented internal shift. For customers familiar with the company's earlier online presence, the later mix of modern storefronts, legacy pages, expanded product categories, and branded merchandise created the impression of a sudden transformation. In reality, the underlying business information remained consistent across platforms. Public-facing details such as business name, location, and core inventory focus continued to align, even as presentation and sales channels diversified. What changed most visibly was the structure through which customers encountered the brand. Instead of a single linear path, there were now multiple entry points, each reflecting a different stage of platform development or a different type of buyer behavior. For C&C equipment, this layered approach likely reduced dependence on any one platform while increasing overall reach. However, for casual observers, fragmented visibility often reads as inconsistency rather than strategy. That perception can easily give rise to speculation, commentary, and questions about motives or direction. The characterization of these developments as unexpected says more about audience assumptions than about the business itself. When viewed collectively, the changes align with common patterns seen in established sellers adapting to evolving e-commerce tools rather than a sudden or unexplained shift in operations. C&C equipment's recent changes are best understood as the outcome of gradual adaptation rather than a single defining event. Public information shows a business that expanded its sales channels, diversified its product mix, and adjusted its online infrastructure while maintaining consistent identity and operations. Multiple storefronts, marketplace listings, and branded merchandise reflect parallel strategies aimed at reach and continuity, not contradiction. The perception of sudden change emerged largely from how these elements became visible at the same time to outside observers. Taken together, the evidence points to an established seller refining how it operates in a modern digital marketplace rather than departing from its original business model.